Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 956, Unexpected Profit. This is a brilliant glow gem. Fellow Daoist should see if it is acceptable. The white silhouette handed over the box to Han Li. Han Li grabbed and opened it to reveal a pale yellow gemstone that glowed with a halo of faint purple light. It was nearly blinding to the eye. In a wave of happiness, he examined it as blue light flickered from his eyes. He then held the stone in between his fingers as he carefully examined it. While Han Li was examining the brilliant glow gem with a calm appearance, the white silhouette was completely shocked. He could only look at the gem for a short while, yet this unknown cultivator was able to stare at the crystal for such a long amount of time. Not bad. It is a top-quality brilliant light gem. Go ahead, take the Devil Essence Diamond. Han Li then put away the gem into his storage pouch. Then I won't refuse. The white silhouette chuckled and carefully put away the diamond. He looked at the other Devil Essence Diamond and said with a greedy tone, "Now then, since there is no one else that wants to trade for it with the items you desire, I'm willing to purchase it at a high price or exchange for other rare materials. No matter the method, I will be sure to satisfy you." Who said that nobody had any materials for it? I have a piece of elemental jade. Wait, that item is mine. I forbid anyone else from having it. As soon as the white silhouette finished speaking, a woman and a man's voice suddenly spoke out from the crowd. The man's voice was deep and thunderous while the woman's was smooth and sweet. Afterwards, streaks of black and silver flashed forward before Han Li. When this happened, the other cultivators began to fill the hall with whispers. While only a few people knew of brilliant glow gems, elemental jade was resoundingly famous in the cultivation world as a top-grade material for refining jade magic treasures. However, this material was incredibly rare and would only appear in the cultivation world once every 500 years. Now that someone had produced it, there were many that were envious and shocked. It appeared these cultivators did possess such rare treasures but that they were unwilling to reveal them. When the white silhouette heard the man's voice, his expression wavered from the shock, though it was concealed by the mist of light surrounding him. The black figure ignored the slender silver mass that arrived first and stared at the white silhouette, forcefully saying, "Second Elder Yi, you dare to violate the rules of the trade meet and control the Devil Essence Diamond." Although one couldn't see his true appearance, his figure was tall and his voice was cold. "Brother Kuan is far too worrisome. How could I do such a thing? I was simply giving this fellow Daoist a suggestion. Since you two are here now, I won't further interfere with the matter." The white silhouette spoke with wry voice and saluted him before returning back from his original location. How tactful. The black figure snorted and held his hands behind his back. The silver form to the side stood gracefully in place as if somewhat stunned by this display. A series of whispers then sounded out form all around them. Kuan. Could he be the austere blood sect elder Kuan Wuji? His voice really sounds like it's him. Apart from that late nascent soul cultivator, who could be so bold? When Han Li heard this, his expression changed. This black figure was a late nascent soul cultivator from one of the illustrious Great 10 Devil Dao sects. After a moment of silence, the silver form let out a shallow breath and said, "So it was Elder Kuan of the austere blood sect. I've been too disrespectful. Do you also have the materials this fellow Daoist needs? In that case, I will step down and give the item to you." It appeared the woman wasn't about to give up on the Devil Essence Diamond with regards to her opponent's cultivation and identity. Kuan Wuji chuckled and said with an eerie tone, "Although I don't have elemental jade or brilliant glow gems, I have materials on an equal level. If you're wise, you'd best step down." The silver form let out a chuckle and said, "That will be quite a problem. I've been wanting a Devil Essence Diamond for quite a long time. How about this? I'd be willing to hand over the item to Brother Kuan if this fellow Daoist prefers your materials over my elemental jade." "Fine, Since I'm not an unreasonable person, I'll have him decide it. Surprising many, Kuan Wuji displayed complete confidence in his words. Han Li was indifferent to who the Devil Essence Diamond would belong to. Although he felt unhappy about having to go through this trouble, he was somewhat relieved to see that the elemental jade had made an appearance. At that moment, she raised her hand and sent out a green wooden box onto the table. There was a faint silver talisman sealed on top of it. "Fellow Daoist should see whether my elemental jade is genuine," the silver form said with a sweet voice. Kuan Wuji sneered and then took out various jade boxes of differing sizes and also placed them on the table. "You should understand that the items I've taken out are far more valuable than some elemental jade." Han Li didn't speak any further and pointed to green wooden box, summoning it into his hand in a gust of wind. With his other hand, he brushed it and released the talisman from it, causing the box to open and reveal a round piece of rainbow jade. Curiously, it didn't glow with a multicolor light, but was filled with abundant spiritual qi. Han Li held the piece of jade in his hand and examined it for a moment before forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart. He nodded to the silver silhouette and said, "Not bad, it's genuine elemental jade." With that said, he shut the box and turned his sights on the other boxes on the table. He wished to simply trade for the elemental jade and leave matters there, but he wasn't about to rashly offend a late nascent soul cultivator. Furthermore, from his bold tone, Han Li was somewhat curious about what the boxes contained. Kuan Wuji pointed at the table and the lids of the boxes began to open of their own accord. Phoenix Fall Wood, Soul Focusing Stone, Myriad Wheel Flower. Before Han Li could recognize what was inside, observant cultivators from the crowd began to name the objects in the boxes, causing most of them to gasp. The silver form was also deeply shocked and turned to look at Han Li in alarm. It was no wonder why Kuan Wuji was so confident. They were incredibly rare and above the elemental jade in rarity. The Myriad Wheel Flower in particular was no less valuable when compared to the Devil Essence Diamond. Han Li's gaze wasn't focused on the most valuable material on the table, the Myriad Wheel Flower, but on the faint golden ore. When the silver form saw this, her heart sank. Han Li raised his hand, summoning the golden ore and closely examining it. When Kuan Wuji saw this, he chuckled and proudly said, "It seems my auric essence had caught your eye. You're quite discerning. Sword cultivators will gain a massive increase in strength with this, and I reckon that only I was able to acquire a piece this large in the entire Great Jin." "I will exchange the diamond for this auric essence," Han Li said. "Please wait, don't you want my elemental jade? Quiet. Do you truly wish to anger me?" Kuan Wuji's initial joy suddenly changed to fury and his body released an astonishing pressure, suppressing the silver form. Han Li watched from the side and saw her recoil a few steps before she managed to recover. Kuan Wuji then grabbed the diamond in front of Han Li and examined it with immense excitement. "It's a true Devil Essence Diamond. My trip was worth it. If those old devils knew that one would appear at this trade fair, they would be filled with regret." He put away the diamond and wildly roared with laughter. With a wave of his sleeve, he took away the remaining jade boxes on the table and made his way to the entrance of the hall in a blur. The white silhouette then said, "Brother Kuan, don't you want to remain behind until the end and look at the grand treasure I have to offer?" "What grand treasure is valuable to me? Now that I have the Devil Essence Diamond, I wish to hastily return and refine the pure devilish qi it contains. I'm not in the mood for any grand treasure." Cackling with laughter, Kuan Wuji's silhouette flashed from the hall's teleportation formation and he disappeared without a trace. Refined devilish qi. Han Li was surprised, but then came to a sudden realization. These Devil Essence Diamonds were something that were condensed in the deepest depths of devilish qi and should contain a significant concentration of devilish qi. A Devil Dao cultivator would be sure to gain many benefits from it. It was no wonder why Kuan Wuji had no interest in any other treasures after he managed to acquire it. At that moment, Silver Form was furious from having the Devil Essence Diamond seized from her, and reached out to recall the elemental jade back into her grasp. Suddenly, Han Li held the box to the table and said, "Wait, I also want this." Chapter 957, The Mountain Crushing Seal. What does fellow Daoist mean? The silver silhouette's voice suddenly grew cold. When the other cultivators saw this, they all revealed alarm. Han Li faintly smiled, and with a hand still holding the box down, he slapped his storage pouch and took out another jade box. The silver silhouette unconsciously received the box and annoyedly said, "I will only trade for a devil essence diamond. I have no interest in anything else. You should take a look at what's inside first." "There's no harm in that," Han Li said with a deep tone. The silver silhouette hesitantly opened the box and took a quick glance before letting out a gasp of surprise. "Good, the elemental jade is yours," the silver silhouette cheerfully said. She had only opened the box halfway before carefully putting the box away and returning to the crowd. All the cultivators around them were left completely baffled. They hadn't caught sight of what was contained in the third jade box Han Li had taken out, but it was enough to get the woman to agree to the exchange. Of course, there were a few people that guessed that it was a third devil essence diamond, but it was already shocking for a single person to possess two of them, let alone a third. Since it was so unlikely, most people had guessed Han Li took out a great treasure to tempt the woman. At that moment, the gazes in the crowd were looking at Han Li with various emotions ranging from envy to hostility. Han Li paid no attention to this and took another glance at the silver silhouette and unconsciously frowned. Her figure gave him a rather familiar impression. Could it be her? A shocking thought suddenly crossed Han Li's mind. Although the voice wasn't the same, cultivators of their stage could change their voice with ease. With that thought, Han Li used his bright sight spirit eyes to look at her. Although he wouldn't be able to completely see through the mist of light, it would allow him make out a more concrete outline. As a result, he wore an odd expression. This woman did appear to be the Endless Sky Saintess, but because of their circumstances, she hadn't discovered his identity and carried off with the Devil Essence diamond in delight. The last of the materials he toiled to collect was actually in the hands of a hated enemy. Han Li felt at a loss of whether he should laugh or cry at this rather ridiculous affair. While his heart was assailed by this indescribable feeling, he quickly put away the auric essence and elemental jade he had acquired and returned to his seat. He no longer paid further attention to anything as he was able to accomplish his objective, and managed to gain a large piece of auric essence without much trouble as well, much to his satisfaction. This chunk would be enough for him to temper most of his remaining swords. Another 40-some-odd cultivators later went on stage to trade their items, but none of them revealed anything as rare as the elemental jade and devil essence diamonds. As such, most attendees were bored with the display, and matters were proceeded in a hurry. Eventually, the last trader had finished and returned to their seat. The white silhouette then clapped his hands twice and said, "Since fellow Taoists had finished their trades, we will begin the auction for the final treasure of this meeting, an item that is truly a marvel to behold." With that said, two cultivators appeared at the entrance of the hall. Surprisingly, the two hadn't placed the concealment talismans on their body and were revealing their true appearance. The crowd became restless and puzzled as most of them had recognized the two. They were an old man with a black hand at early nascent soul cultivation and a middle-aged man with a square face at mid-nascent soul cultivation, the elders of the Imperial Yi clan that commonly interacted with outsiders. Only a few cultivators seemed to understand what was happening. They had received information of the treasure that would appear in the trade meet and their spirits were greatly roused. At that moment, the middle-aged man approached the table at the center of the hall and nodded towards the white silhouette. He turned around to face the crowd and slowly said, "There will be no need for introductions, so I'll keep it short. This grand treasure is something that our Yi clan had spent much effort creating. It had taken us over 100 years, and we've only recently finished it. However, there have been several sects close to the Yi clan that were looking to purchase this item, but we dare not to offend any of them. As we are helpless, we have decided to auction it as the last item of the trade meet. Let's see if any fellow Daoist has the opportunity to acquire this grand treasure." With that said, he turned to the old man and gave him a nod. The old man took out a foot-long box and gritted his teeth before reluctantly handing it over to the white silhouette. The white silhouette chuckled and said, "Since that is done, I won't be wasting my breath either. I'll first show everyone the true appearance of this treasure." He then tossed the jade box into the air and a fist-sized blinding yellow streak slowly floated out from it. As soon as it appeared, it seemed to fluctuate in size of its own accord and release faint hums. He then clasped his hands in an incantation gesture and struck it with several spell seals. After he pointed at it, he let out a soft shout, causing it to wildly flash and revolve in place before it revealed its true form, a yellow seal that was several inches large. The stamp appeared as smooth as jade. But from the fluctuating light on its surface, one could faintly see layers of gold-and-silver spell formations on top of it. Each time light flickered, it would display a different set of talisman characters, causing observers to feel greatly mystified upon further inspection. In addition, the stamp released a spiritual chi that was completely massive, yet steady and calm. When the spectators sensed this, they were deeply shocked. This treasure is called the Mountain-Crushing Seal, an imitation of the ancient divine spirit treasure, the Heaven-Wielding Seal. According to the Yi clan's tests, although it only displays a tenth of the original's power, it is more than enough to flatten any mountain. Even if a cultivator possesses great enough spiritual power to wield the entirety of its might, it will be possible to wield a third of the power of the Heaven-Wielding Seal. However, this will heavily damage the treasure, so it would be best to avoid doing this. As the white silhouette spoke, he controlled the mountain-crushing seal in front of him to continuously fluctuate in size and release an astonishing aura. Although this demonstration didn't fully display its might, it was enough to show that it was beyond ordinary. No matter their past knowledge, the seal had firmly captured their attention. When Han Li heard that it was a replica of a divine spirit treasure, he was also surprised. He had already spent a great effort to gather the materials needed to refine the Triflame fan. Now that a divine spirit treasure replica had appeared at the auction, Han Li felt particularly gloomy. It is a pity he didn't know much of divine spirit treasures. He wasn't sure how the Triflame fan would compare in strength to this mountain-crushing seal. As if guessing his thoughts, Monarch Soul Divergence said, "There is no need to worry, the mountain-crushing seal only displays a tenth of the original treasure's might. The Triflame fan I deducted from the Seven-Flame fan should possess 2/5 of its original power. And as this person says, if exerted, it will be able to display half of the original treasure's might. Although both are attack-type treasures, the seal should be inferior to the fan in terms of might." Han Li nodded and muttered, "Yes, I've thought as much. I hope I'll be able to refine the Triflame fan soon. With that treasure in my hands, I reckon I'll have nothing to fear from late nascent soul cultivators." Monarch Soul Divergence snorted and coldly chuckled. "This isn't the heavenly south. Do you think that your replica will be unique?" Senior means to say, "According to what I've discovered when I toured the Great Jinn, the High Zenith Sect, the Heavenly Devil Sect, and the Myriad Demon Valley all had replicas of divine spirit treasures. Myriad Demon Valley, in particular, had the most famous of the replicas, the Myriad Demon Banner. It is said that the flag has already reached the same level as its original, the Heaven Demon Banner, as a result of the many cultivator souls it had devoured. As for the other great sects, I wouldn't be surprised if they managed to refine 1 or 2 replicas of their own. How else would they be able to remain towering after all this time?" Chapter 958. Encountering the Elder Devil. After some thought, Han Li conceded, since a noble clan like the Yi clan was capable of creating a divine spirit treasure replica, other great sects should have been able to do so as well. "There is no point in being dejected," Monarch Soul Divergence sourly said. "Although they may be replicas, they were refined from rare materials. I reckon that most of these materials are extinct in this world and were only gathered together over a long period of time. Besides, don't you have a genuine divine spirit treasure in your possession? If you are able to fully wield it, none would be able to stand against you in this world." When Han Li heard this, he wryly snickered. "As if that would be easy. It will only be a daydream unless I am able to reach deity transformation stage. But if I reach that level, I'll be able to reign over the mortal world without the Heaven Void Cauldron in hand." Monarch Soul Divergence chuckled and said nothing else. The hall was filled with an overpowering silence after the introduction of the mountain-crushing seal. The white silhouette could read the pressure from the crowd and didn't delay any further with the explanation. After a light cough, he began to describe the conditions to acquire the seal. The Yi clan has already prepared a list of the items it desires. Whoever is able to produce the most of these materials will be able to acquire this treasure. Of course, if the value of the highest trade is obviously insufficient, it will not be accepted. The final method of trade will be an auction with a minimum bid of 3 million spirit stones. When this was said, a majority of cultivators present became restless, but none had raised any objections. Although that number of spirit stones was most of the wealth that a mid-sized cultivator sect possessed, it truly was a low price for it. When the auction started, it was more than likely that the bids would reach several times the minimum. When Han Li heard the conditions of the trade, he felt a chill shake his heart as a strange thought came to mind. If he were to take out his last Devil Essence diamond and put it on auction, he could acquire a significant amount of spirit stones. However, it wasn't quite comparable. The most famous treasure of the Devil Dao, the Devil Dragon Blade, was something he had done a bit of research on. It appeared that only one of them was able to be refined, and this was during ancient times. It was said that some devil cultivators were able to kill deity transformation stage cultivators with the weapon, and its might was no inferior to a divine spirit treasure. Since the Devil Dragon Blade was a magic treasure, it had immense potential, but it couldn't be refined with only 1 or 2 Devil Essence diamonds. Even so, a devil cultivator could greatly increase their cultivation by absorbing the diamond's pure devilish qi, which caused its immense value. Just as these random thoughts appeared in his head, the old man took out a jade slip containing the list of materials and began to read them out loud. Although his voice was soft, everyone in the hall could clearly hear him. After this was said, Han Li grew indifferent and no longer had any intention of fighting over the treasure. It wasn't that he couldn't be tempted by the treasure, but that he was aware of his own limits. As a lone cultivator, how could he possibly compare to the vast wealth of the greatest sects of the Jin Empire? Even the entire fortune of a smaller sect couldn't hope to compete. After hearing out the list of items they wanted in exchange, Han Li became certain the Yi clan was willing to take out the mountain crushing seal at this auction because they taking advantage of being pressured by the various superpowers to sell the item. The old man hadn't uttered the name of materials as rare as elemental jade or auric essence, but since the requested items were both uncommon and essential, large sects would always keep a stockpile of them. It appears the Yi clan were planning to deal a striking blow to these sects. With that in mind, Han Li stood up and headed towards the teleportation formation of the hall. The action had aroused quite a bit of attention and bewilderment, as many cultivators had taken note of him after he produced 2 Devil Essence diamonds. Han Li paid little notice of this and continued on his way out. But just as he was about to enter the glowing formation, he heard the sound of a familiar voice. "Fellow Daoist Han, why are you leaving now?" Old Man Fu had sent him a voice transmission. Han Li stopped and replied, "I've become a target of attention. It'd be best for me to depart before I attract problems. I still haven't forgotten about Brother Fu's affair. If you aren't in a hurry, how about we talk about it in a few years after I finish refining a treasure? My matter isn't urgent at all. However, Brother Han has taken quite the effort to conceal himself from me. I didn't have the slightest clue you possessed something as precious as Devil Essence diamonds. It is no wonder the Yin Sifting sect is pursuing you. Anyways, in 4 years' time, could you meet me in Nanjing Province's Chaoyun Prefecture? At that time, I will have arranged for other fellow Taoists to meet me at Twin Scorpion Mountain. I guarantee that although the matter will require some effort, you will most certainly be rewarded." 4 years. That will be enough time. I'll see you then. With that said, Han Li stepped into the formation and disappearing in a flash of white light. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, Han Li flew out from the underground trade meet, flying a circle in the air before heading east. A short moment after Han Li departed, several cultivators quietly departed from the trade meet as well, having more or less had the same thoughts about the mountain crushing seal. Most, however, decided to remain behind. After all, there were to be even more rare materials, along with the fierce competition involved. After quickly flying 500 kilometers away, he passed by a nearby mountain and had heard a peculiar sword cry. Han Li's expression vastly changed and he came to a sudden stop. He took a deep breath and sharply glanced around him. Tens of golden flying swords were simultaneously released to densely fly around him with great momentum. With blue light flashing from his eyes, he stared at an empty space and coldly said, "Your tracks have already been revealed. There is no point in hiding, come out." He. You are truly clever. As expected of the cultivator who slew my main soul. Black light flashed from where Han Li was standing to reveal a youth with a similar appearance to himself. He also wore azure robes and had a calm expression, but a dim black-purple light shined from his eyes. When Han Li saw this person, he felt his heart drop despite having already anticipated this. So, it was you. Why have you come to find me? After examining Han Li for a moment, he lazily said, It seems you already know who I am. I didn't expect to find you so quickly. It seems my luck is quite good. Han Li emotionlessly said, My 2 swords are in your possession. I'd have to be stupid to not know who you are. That's right, your flying swords are right here. The Elder Devil's soul fragment raised his hand and revealed 2 small swords that were violently trembling. They were attempting to return to Han Li with all their might, but layers of black thread were firmly keeping them in place. Your flying swords possess quite a bit of sentience to take the initiative to warn you. Han Li's expression turned sullen. The Elder Devil mysteriously smiled and said, To think, these swords were actually refined from the evil-slaying golden lightning bamboo. The others should be the same, revealing quite an unbelievable amount in total. It appears my main soul hadn't perished for nothing. Although I was able to avoid being consumed, with his death I will forever be unable to recover my complete cultivation. Should I thank you, or kill you? Han Li paused before wearing a frigid smile. Don't tell me that you were waiting here only to have a chat with me. The Elder Devil looked down at the 2 golden swords in his hand and said, That's up to you to decide. So long as you tell me how you were able to acquire so much golden lightning bamboo, I may be willing to let you go. But I may also be willing to draw out the answer from your primal soul. When Han Li heard this, his bearing remained unchanged. He then narrowed his eyes and imposingly said, Talking about killing me and actually doing so are 2 very different things. If I remembered correctly, you were heavily injured in the heavenly south. It's hard to believe you've fully recovered after a short amount of time. I will be comparing your abilities to that of the main soul. I originally thought you would speak when faced with death, but I guess not. So be it. Killing intent surged from the Elder Devil, and the black-purple light in his eyes glowed. Chapter 959, Raging Devil Flames. Just as Han Li and the Elder Devil were about to clash, the devil's expression suddenly stirred and he glanced behind him. Han Li also soon sensed something as well and glanced in the same direction with a raised brow. Soon, a blaze flashed from a distance, followed by a streak of light. When he saw how quickly it was traveling, along with the faint sounds of a storm, he was surprised. A fierce aura bled from the devil as he flew forward to meet the approaching light with an ominous glint in his eyes. In a mere moment, the streak closed the distance of over 10 kilometers, revealing a monk with disheveled hair. Heck had a stern expression on his face, with one hand holding a scarlet alms bowl and the other a meter-long green staff. When he saw the 2, he was surprised to see that they had the same face. The monk looked at them both and smiled, asking, May I ask which one is the fellow daoist that emerged from the trade meet? Han Li's expression stirred and he silently glanced at him. The monk possessed mid-nascent soul cultivation and had unordinary treasures, so it came as no surprise that he would dare to follow him. However, Han Li was disinterested since he didn't know his intentions. As for the Elder Devil, when he saw the intruder, he looked to the sky with his hands behind his back and ignored him. The monk grew furious. Ever since he entered nascent soul stage and came into possession of his blood-fire bowl and coiling dragon staff, those of equivalent strength had all treated him with great courtesy. Now, these 2 disregarded him, despite appearing to possess somewhat similar cultivation, and he couldn't help but hold an unsightly expression on his face. To make matters worse, their appearances were similar, so they appeared to be together. If he were to fight them, he couldn't predict the outcome despite his confidence. As such, he could only forcefully restrain himself as he began to plan how to best strike them down. But before he could conceive an approach, more lights shined from over the horizon. 3 various-colored streaks were flying together towards them. When the monk saw this, he was stunned. He was only able to chase Han Li after using an additional ability to increase his speed. Now, there were 3 unknown parties that were just a step behind. It appeared there would be some difficulty to claim the treasures for himself, but with these new arrivals, he wouldn't need to face these 2 cultivators alone. With that thought, the monk revealed a gloomy countenance and gave them a sinister glance. As if sensing the monk's ill intent, the elder devil suddenly focused his gaze on him and then looked at the incoming lights with impatience. How troublesome. I originally believed that you would be the only bother. I didn't think that there were more people coming after you. Since that's the case, let's start off with him. After those cold words were said, the elder devil's body flashed with black light and rushed towards the monk. The monk inwardly shouted in alarm and instantly flipped the arm's bowl, releasing a cloud of scarlet flame and forming a barrier around him. Then the dark green staff in his other hand transformed into an emerald flood dragon and charged forward to meet the streak of black light. With green mist trailing from the flood dragon's mouth, it fiercely swiped at the elder devil, but before the strike landed, the devil's body quivered with light and disappeared. Tapping his vast experience in battle, the monk instantly raised his hands to form an incantation gesture and released several green spell seals into the barrier of flame protecting him. The inferno surged and began to circle with astonishing momentum, turning into a green-red whirlwind that reached 100 meters tall. Still feeling ill at ease, the monk slapped his storage pouch to take out another protective treasure. But before he could, a black blip flashed 10 meters away from him, followed by 2 arms covered in black-purple light reaching out towards him. In that instant, the arms had already moved into the flame barrier without the slightest fear. Ah! The monk's heart trembled at the sight and without another thought, he yelled, releasing a large golden mist from his mouth. It quickly condensed into a light barrier in front of him as his body blurred in an attempt to dodge away. A faint bang sounded out. Like paper, the golden barrier was split by the 2 devilish arms and made their way to the monk's dantian. After piercing clean through, the claws violently parted, rending the monk's body into 2, splatting gore and blood into the air. A red nascent soul cried out and flew off on a golden sword, traveling over 60 meters away from its body. Just as the nascent soul glowed in golden light to perform another instantaneous movement, it was too late. A purple thread suddenly appeared behind it, followed by something piercing through its head. Its mind burned and it let out a shriek as all its strength fled. Powerless, it was tightly wrapped by the purple thread and was brought back into the barrier of red flames. The 3 streaks of light had then arrived a kilometer away, and the cultivators within them were able to clearly see what had happened. The 3 felt fear overwhelm their hearts and immediately turned around, flying back with even greater speed. They were all early nascent soul cultivators. Though they originally conspired to join hands together, when they saw the famous monk Wickedfire viciously slain and had his nascent soul captured, they immediately turned to flee. They now knew their greed would only result in downfall, and soon disappeared out of sight. Han Li felt his breath turn cold when he saw how viciously the elder devil disposed of the monk. He stared at the distant flames with a disturbed expression. Strange shrill laughs echoed out from the blaze, and then the flames were extinguished, revealing the devil once more. Han Li's mouth twitched when he saw this and he felt sullen. The elder devil had already taken half-devil form. Although his appearance still resembled that of a human, he had another pair of arms and all 4 of them had turned black-purple. A frightening meter-long purple tongue hung from his mouth. It was halfway lifted and firmly holding the monk's nascent soul. As he stared at Han Li with an unflinching gaze, Han Li narrowed his eyes and silently returned it. Monarch Soul Divergence then worryingly said, "Youngster Han, you can't tangle with this devil for long. The underground trade fair is nearby, and I fear that in just a moment, more will come and it will be difficult for you to break free." "I know. I originally thought to compare his abilities to that of the main soul, but it seems to be too dangerous to fight him. Let's go." Han Li spoke indifferently. With a wave of his hand, the golden flying swords revolving around him let out a cry and they all flew into his sleeve. Afterwards, he opened his mouth and released several balls of blood essence from his mouth, shrouding his body in a blood mist. "Don't you think it's too late to run?" An inhuman light flashed from the elder devil's eyes and his tongue withdrew into his mouth. Then in a blur, he disappeared from sight. Han Li took no notice of these actions and formed a gesture with his hands. In a clap of thunder, Silver light flashed and his figure became unclear as blood mist emerged around him. At nearly that same moment, black light flickered in front of Han Li, revealing the Elder Devil's monstrous form. He was quite a bit quicker than when he had killed the monk despite traveling twice the distance. Han Li now no longer carried his calm air, and inwardly shouted in alarm. An evil grin appeared on the devil's face, and he opened his mouth in an attempt to strike at Han Li with his tongue. He was stopped, however, when an icy snort bore into the Elder Devil's mind. Although his spiritual sense was exceedingly powerful, immense pain flooded through his mind and he suddenly had to stop his attack. During that delay, Han Li blurred and shot forward in a blur of crimson light, disappearing from sight in the span of a single breath. In the Elder Devil's alarm, he quickly released his spiritual sense and swept the range of 50 kilometers and found a trace of Han Li. However, he immediately made use of blood shadow evasion once more and fully escaped from the range of the devil's spiritual sense. The Elder Devil couldn't help but remain in place. Wasn't that the shadow form evasion, a secret technique of Iron-Winged Devils? How can a cultivator from the mortal realm employ it? This will be troublesome. Wait, there seems to be something different about it. As he muttered to himself, a pensive expression appeared on his face. Spiritual light then flickered from the distant sky, followed by 7 various-colored streaks heading in his direction. The Elder Devil's expression stirred and he woke from his stupor. A fierce and icy gaze swept past the group. It's good that you've come. I just finished refining the nascent souls that I've collected. After consuming you lot, my injuries should be fully restored in several years. He eerily muttered to himself. With a deep breath, a large cloud of black-purple devilish chi was released from his body, thoroughly covering himself. His transformation began a step further, growing a second head in addition to his 4 arms. Then, he emotionlessly stared at the oncoming cultivators with 2 pairs of glowing purple eyes. Chapter 960, The Heavenly Talisman Sect. The Huiyuan province was a large territory on the eastern shore of the Jin Empire. Most of its towns and cities were constructed on the coast, and there were many overseas cultivators that would arrive here to trade various demon beast materials for a few cultivation resources from inland. As such, the province's markets were prosperous all year long and the sects were abundantly wealthy, reaping large sums of spirit stones year after year. There were even a few smaller markets farther away, but due to their favorable location, they were also doing quite well. Kaijiang village was a small town in the province over 100 kilometers off the shore. There was a modest mountain nearby less than a kilometer tall. It possessed an inferior spiritual vein and could barely be considered to be a spiritual mountain. While this 100-bamboo mountain was beneath the notice of larger powers, it was home to a small sect by the name of Heavenly Talisman Sect. The sect seemed to be of the lowest level in the cultivation world, and all the members combined totaled a little over 100. Despite the Heavenly Talisman Sect's poor condition, it had a vast and long history. Tens of thousands of years ago, Daoist Heaven Talisman, the founder of the sect, had created 3 secret talismans whose power shook through the entire Great Jin, managing to bring the sect on par with the 10 great righteous sects. Although it wasn't known as the greatest sect during its climax and didn't have a lineage that spanned back to ancient times, it had tens of thousands of members and was the peak sect in the province. Although the Heavenly Talisman Sect was highly accomplished in the Tao of Talismans, their cultivation techniques were rather ordinary, and talismans could only accomplish so much. Several generations after their rise, they experienced a massive decline. Over the passage of time, they only barely managed to continue existing by passing down a few of their secret talisman techniques. Apart from a few other cultivators from small sects, there were rarely high-grade cultivators that have visited. As such, the disciples on guard duty would often find themselves idle, and would rather chat with one another than to cultivate. One day, 2 chi condensation cultivators on guard duty both let out a depressing sigh. A male disciple in his late teens muttered, "Senior Marshal Brother Lee, is the market truly going to close? Although I've only entered the sect recently, I still know that the 3 essence market is where nearly half of our income comes from. Without those spirit stones, how can our sect continue to exist?" A youth in his mid-20s of a plump stature helplessly said, "What can we do? Several days ago, the Spirit Wind Sect gave our sect master the last notice that either our market will merge with theirs or they will close it in 3 months. They are bullying us with their strength. Merge markets. That sounds possible. The youngster disciple wore an astonished expression. HMPH. Possible? I heard a martial uncle say that after we merge we're not allowed to interfere with any of the businesses there. The Spirit Wind Sect will simply give us 1,000 spirit stones every year. That's less than a third of what we currently make, and isn't anywhere near enough. The older youth said with an indignant tone. The younger disciple blinked in disbelief and puzzlingly said, the Spirit Wind Sect might be a larger sect, but how could Gold Mist Mountain, Bright Sun Valley, or our own sect agree to such a small amount? The 3 Essence Market is something that our sects had created. If we were to join hands, we have nothing to fear from them. The older youth snorted and explained, if it was only the Spirit Wind Sect, then our sect would have nothing to fear. But I heard that Yang Fiend Sect has a hand in this matter. A genuine mid-grade sect like theirs isn't something that a small sect like ours can resist. Today, the sect master had invited the masters of our allied sects to discuss a plan of action. They aren't in a better position than us and will not easily give up on the market. The Yang Fiend Sect. That is something that our Heavenly Talisman sect can't provoke. It seems it will be difficult for our sect to make it past this trial. The younger disciple was dejected when he heard that sect's name. If their sect received fewer spirit stones, then so would the disciples as well. The older youth sighed and said, leave the matter be. This isn't something that low-grade disciples like us can deal with. Let's just guard the mountain the best we can. If we keep on talking about this and a martial uncle finds out, we won't just lose spirit stones, will ye? What's that? Suddenly, he looked to the sky and shouted out in astonishment. When the younger disciple heard this, he looked to the sky as well and saw a light shine from a distance. Afterwards, a 10-meter-long azure streak shot towards their direction. As the azure streak approached them with incredible speed, the younger disciple shouted out in alarm, it seems a senior is coming to visit us, but who is that? Although he wasn't acquainted in the cultivation world for long, he understood that the streak of light wasn't something that a foundation establishment cultivator could produce and felt greatly uneasy. The older youth was at a loss and muttered, I don't know. Perhaps he's come to pay a visit to the martial ancestor. The words only served to console himself. Soon, the azure streak arrived above them. As if catching sight of the 2 disciples, the streak of light dropped to the ground and faded away to reveal an azure-robed youth in his early 20s with his hands held behind his back. Despite his ordinary appearance, he possessed an impressive bearing. When the 2 met his gaze, they could feel the pressure of a mountain weighing down upon them. It had already been 4 months since Han Li had left the underground trade fair and fled from the Elder Devil. He indifferently asked, is this the 100 Bamboo Mountains Heavenly Talisman Sect? Sensing Han Li's immeasurable cultivation, they soon determined that this cultivator was a senior of at least core formation cultivation. After exchanging a glance, the older youth deeply bowed and said, yes, senior. Is there anything I may help you with? Han Li nodded and said, it seems I've found the right place. I am carrying something deeply related to your esteemed sect and wish to see your sect master. Go and make the report. Yes. Please wait a moment, senior. The older youth flusteredly took out a sound transmission talisman and whispered a few words before tossing it into the air. The talisman then flew into the mountain's restrictions in a streak of fiery light. Han Li had already swept past the small mountain with his spiritual sense while he calmly stood. Although there was a layer of restrictions present, he was able to sense the general circumstances of the mountain. He frowned as a result. He already knew that the Heavenly Talisman sect wasn't large before he arrived, but the sect only had 100 members and he could only sense the faint aura of an early core formation cultivator. It was exactly as Old Man Yoon in the Umbra Realm had told him, the sect was on the verge of death. Of course, Han Li hadn't come here solely to return the spirit subjugation talisman's refinement method. There were also rumors of several venomous flood dragons appearing in the Huiyuan province. Soon, a flicker of yellow light appeared behind the 2 gatekeepers along with a 30-meter-tall gate, followed by 3 cultivators walking side by side. They moved past the 2 gatekeeping disciples and were shocked upon seeing Han Li. A yellow-robed old man quickly stepped forward and deeply bowed towards him, respectfully saying, "We are honored by your presence. This junior is Yu Zhen, the Heavenly Talisman Sect Master. I hope you don't take offense that I wasn't able to greet you from a distance." Although he wasn't able to see through Han Li's true cultivation, he had much experience as the Sect Master and had met many nascent soul cultivators and now sensed an equally powerful presence. He couldn't help but feel fear. Such a powerful cultivator could kill a small sect like theirs with ease. It was difficult to tell whether this occurrence would result in disaster or happiness. From the sound transmission talisman, he originally believed that it was a core formation cultivator. As such, he called on the sect's soul core formation elder to come to the gate, but now he saw that was a meaningless action. When Han Li saw their fearful appearance, he couldn't help but chuckle. "There is no need to be alarmed, as I have no malicious intentions. I have come here to return something I was entrusted with." Yu Zhen felt his heart relax when he heard him and excitedly said, "This junior is a bit confused, but let's not talk here. Please come in and have a seat. We can have the discussion there." After pondering for a moment, Han Li nodded. "Yes, that's fine. This matter isn't something that a few words can clearly explain." "Then I welcome you, senior." Yu Zhen rejoiced and he hastily stood to the side, respectfully having him enter first. Han Li didn't refuse and stepped past the gate. With a solemn expression, the other cultivators obediently followed. The 100 bamboo forest wasn't very large, so they quickly arrived at the sect buildings on top of the mountain. Han Li and the sect master then entered the main hall. To his surprise, there were 2 middle-aged cultivators already sitting in the hall. They frightfully stood up after sensing Han Li's cultivation and hastily bowed. Han Li waved his hand for them to sit back down, but they didn't dare and only stood at the side. Yu Zhen apologetically said, "Fellow Taoists, this is a guest of the sect. We'll have to talk about this matter another time." We are honored by your presence, senior. Please go ahead." "That's right, we'll be taking our leave." The 2 cultivators quickly came to an understanding and wore an expression of admiration before bowing once more and departing from the hall. Then, white light flashed from the outside and a colorless streak shot in, revealing a white-robed old man. When Yu Zhen and the others saw him, they hastily saluted with a smile and paid their respects. "Greetings, Martial Uncle Wen."